this is, of course, YouTube Live, and it happens to be May the 23rd, 2026. And today I'm going to be talking about influence and environment. Let's open our time with a word of prayer. Father, I thank you today for this wonderful opportunity to be able to share about influence and also, as well, of course, environment. When you and I, for example, spend all day in a fish market, you leave smelling like a fish, even if you didn't ever touch it. Years, not that long ago, I used to work as a radio announcer, and we were in a building. Our particular radio station was on the seventh floor. So every day I would have to get in and get off or in an elevator. And many, many times I would be getting off from work and then heading into the elevator, and you could smell the smoke that someone had been smoking cigarettes on the elevator, and you'd come out of the elevator smelling like smoke. And it was even though you had never touched smokes or cigarettes in your life. When I was a young lad, for example, my mom and dad were prolific smokers. They would smoke cigarettes and cigars all day long. Little did I know that by association, of course, I would smell like smoke. Now, it was interesting that when I was 10 years old, I began smoking myself. And my parents never knew because I smelled like smoke because they smelled like cigarette smoke. And so it wasn't the fact that, I was always doing it, but because of association and because of the environment that I was in, I always smelled like cigarette smoke. And I thought it was very interesting that as a lad, I would often go to school smelling like cigarette smoke on my clothing, even though I wasn't involved with it. So it is very important that you understand environment and influence. For example, if you spend all day in a perfume shop, you'll carry the scent at the end of the day. So it's very important to understand the environment that you are in and the influence that you are actually bringing to the table. For example, if you spend all day with people who are criticizing and people who are complaining and people who are lying and deceiving, guess what? You will actually find yourself doing that yourself. You'll begin to criticize, you'll begin to lie, you'll begin to complain, you'll begin to, not always be honest. Why? Because of the environment that you are in. It's very important to understand that the people that you hang out with are the people that you're going to begin to reflect in your life. So if you stay around people who show gratitude, and you'll find yourself in seeing the world in a positive perspective. It all depends on, of course, two things. Number one, the attitude that you actually develop within yourself, and also the people that you hang out with. Now, it's interesting that today, for example, we have a show and shine at the local Legion where I am. And so I'm going to be gathering together with other classic car and motorcycle aficionados, which means we're going to sit down and we're going to be able to talk about, the different things. Last night, I have a neighbor whose name is Wayne, and Wayne was out there driving in his truck. And so he stopped by my place, and I was able to show him my 1965 classic truck. We had a wonderful discussion about classic trucks, and Wayne is a backyard mechanic. So we were talking about different things concerning backyard mechanics. Now, my 1965 truck, of course, is a classic, and it's very simplistic to fix. And so Wayne was in there looking at the motor, and he was looking at the transmission, and he was looking at the wheels. And we had a wonderful discussion together. Why? Because we had a mutual interest in, of course, classic vehicles. Now, today I'm going to have a absolutely wonderful time talking with all these different classic truck and car aficionados and motorcyclists, because this day I have chosen to make that my environment. Now, of course, we're going to have a wonderful time together. Now, if you spend time with people who are positive, if you spend time people with who are grateful and thankful, you know what? That's going to rub off on you today. If you spend time in a environment that is not so good, I remember when I first started working in a particular institution, and for the first 2 or 3 days that I was, we would meet at the end of the shift, and we would have what they call a debriefing. Well, after we had done our debriefing, it was interesting that our leadership in that institution would leave. And then instantaneously, as we were sitting around the table, the conversation would turn into gossip and slander, and usually about the people that had been leaders. And we would then start complaining. Well, I went on with this for about 3 or 4 days, and I began to find myself talking and complaining just like those people were. And you heard the latest gossip and the latest things that were going on, but they were talking about people who had left, or people who had, been on that institution for years. And I began to realize that if they're going to start talking about these other people, sooner or later, they were going to start talking about me. So when the leadership would leave, I would leave with them. And, I would sit out in the day room and, basically do something else, and until it was time to leave. And one day, one of the young ladies who was part of that institution with me, she was about my age, she asked me, she says, "Why are you leaving when, of course, you could stay?" I said, "It's very simple. I did not want to stay in an environment of gossip and slander." She says, "I don't like it either. Do you mind if I sit with you and chat with you?" I said, "Of course." And over time, there was 6 or 7 of us that would meet in the day room, and we would have these wonderful conversations. We'd be laughing. We'd be, chatting about good things. It was because we made a decision that we were not going to stay in that environment of gossip and slander and complaining. You know why? Because we were becoming like the people who were leading the conversation, and we didn't want to do that anymore. So remember, where you spend your time and who you spend your time with, it is environment and influence. If you are spending your time with positive people, with people who are grateful, people who are, kind, people who want the truth, that is the type of person that you're going to become, because you've made the choice. But if you chase after materialism, if you chase after, the things that people consider important, like fame and popularity, and you'll find very quickly that it gets pretty old pretty quick. How many celebrities have been destroyed chasing after, for example, fame and popularity and money? And sooner or later, they find out that it leaves you basically empty. I was listening to the story of Sam Elliott. Sam Elliott is a very well-known actor in Hollywood. He has actually been married to Catherine Ross since the 1970s. And they asked him, How is it that you are able to stay married in an environment where there's everybody seems to be, of course, splitting off someplace? He says very simply this. He says, I know where my influence is. I know where my anchor is. I know the choices that I've made for this particular woman. He says, this lady is my anchor. This lady is my stabilization. This lady is my foundation. And I am hers. It's the choices that he has made, even though he's in a very deceptive and, fake reality. He also knows where realism is. And that is a choice that you and I make every day. We make a choice of what kind of life we're going to live. We make the choice about the people that we allow in our lives, for how long that we allow them to be in our lives. Yesterday, for example, I went around and I visited with different people in my neighborhood. I visited with my neighbors. I visited with the Catholic priest across the road. We had a wonderful conversation across the road, and I learned an awful lot about the local Catholic priest. It was a wonderful conversation, and but each of these environments, I only spent a certain amount of time in, understanding that, there are people that we need to, be a part of. Like today, for example, I'm going to have the privilege of spending time with those, at this show and shine with people who like classic cars, and also as well, motorcycles. But later on today, I'm going to have the privilege of spending some time with my grandchildren. We have the responsibility of taking care of our grandchildren, because my daughter-in-law is going to be looking after her horses. We have a farrier that's coming in, and of course, they're going to, do the horses' hoofs. And so we have the privilege of spending time in different places, understanding that the environments that we find ourselves, for however long it is or however short it is only temporary. But every day, you and I, we make choices. We decide on who we're going to hang out with, what kind of influence we're going to allow into our lives. Please understand that, like I said before, when I first started my chat, if you spend all day in a fish market, you're going to smell like fish. If you, of course, spend all day in a perfume shop, well, you're going to smell like perfume. So when you hang out with complainers, you're going to find yourself with complainers. If you hang out with people that are, practicing gratitude, you'll find yourself in a world of positive perspective. It's how environment works. So today, understand the choices that you are making, understand the environment that you find yourself, and make the decision accordingly. If you have to spend time with people, well, understand that they bring certain narratives to the table. They make certain, demands on you, and you have to decide, am I going to give into that demand, or am I going to, choose to disregard it? It's the choices that we make and the environment that we find ourselves in. There's a lot of people out there, for example, who don't like their job. And the reason they don't like their job is because of the person who's in charge. This is a little exhortation to employers, for example. Make your work environment as pleasant as possible, because you're going to retain people, because it's a positive place to be. And if you are a complainer, you're going to find very quickly that the turnover is incredible. So the environment that we create is also important. This is a little exhortation to moms and dads. Moms and dads, when you treat your children right and positive, guess what? You're going to have children who are, exploitative, they're going to be creative, and they're going to be well balanced. It's the choices that we make. Also, the environment that we ourselves create. If you're creating a positive and also a grateful and thankful environment, that's the type of people that you are going to attract. If you're complaining, if you're angry all the time, if you're negative, guess what? You're going to attract those types of people. Yesterday, for example, my wife and I were doing some gardening around our home, and we have this particular bush that is flowering right now. Well, that bush is full of honeybees. That's right. We had all these bees in our bush. I didn't even know we had that many bees in our entire area. But because of the fragrance that is being currently put out by that bush, it is attracting all these honeybees. So, in the same way, whatever you put out in your environment, that is going to attract the type of people that you want in your life. So, if you're positive, if you're truthful, if you're honest, if you're kind, that's the type of people that you are going to attract. If you are critical, if you're angry, if you're complaining, if you're a mocker, those are the type of people that you are going to attract in your life. You see the difference? It's very, very important that you and I, every morning when we get up, make a decision. Make a decision about what kind of person you're going to be. And make a decision about what kind of people you want in your life and the people that you're going to attract in your life. Because whether you like it or not, misery loves company. But also, as well, Thanksgiving loves company as well. And it's our choice to make that decision. So here I am at the beginning of the day. And I am looking forward to this day because I get to hang out with classic car people. I'm going to go out in a little while, start my classic truck, and I'm going to go and hang out at the Show and Shine. And then tonight, I'm going to have the privilege of being able to spend some time with my grandchildren. But it's the choices that I have made for this day that's going to either enhance my day and make my day very positive, or I can make the choice to be, kind of angry and critical and a complaining. I choose not to do that. Why? Because I'm in an environment and I'm creating an environment. That's my choice, and it should be your choice as well. That's my thought for you today. Let me pray for you today. Father, I want to pray right now for those who are finding themselves in difficult situations. They find themselves in that situation, sometimes not because of their own making, but because of the environment that they find themselves in. If they find themselves in a complaining and negative environment, I pray that you'll help them to find a way out of it. Secondly, let them also today make their own environment and influence as well by making certain choices. It was the Apostle Paul who said, love is patient and love is kind. Let us today choose to create an environment of kindness and love today. Because as the old Burt Bacharach song said, what the world needs now is love, sweet love. So help us to do that today. That's how environment works, and that is how, of course, influence works. We choose to be positive, we choose to be grateful, we choose to be thankful, and we choose to be kind. That's what we choose to do today. We choose the path of love. That's a great way to start the day, and that's a great way to end the day. Well, my name is Robert Dean Steele. I always tell you that if you like what you're hearing and seeing, press the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I want to thank all the different people who have over the years subscribed to my YouTube channel, and also as well the new subscribers. Thank you so much for doing that. And if you like what you're hearing, do that as well. Also as well, I encourage you to check out my YouTube shorts. I did a series of them this morning, and I think that you'll find them quite informative. check those out as well. They're usually less than a minute long, doesn't take very long, but you know what? The one thought could actually give you direction and influence your life. So check those out as well. My name is Robert Dean Steele. Thank you for joining me today. And remember, be a person who practices gratitude, and you'll find yourself in a world of positive perspective. Remember that today.